Have you ever sat in a crowded room, listening to the person you call your spouse humiliate you in front of everyone, while you can't do a single thing to stop it? I have. It happened at a wedding of all places. My wife, Sophia, laughed louder than the music as she told strangers that our marriage doesn't even count because he's too boring. In that moment, the air left my lungs, and something inside me broke for good. But I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I didn't cause a scene. Instead, I smiled to myself, because what she didn't know was that I had been planning for this night for months. And when the time came, I was ready. My name is Daniel. I'm 35 years old, and for the past 4 years, I thought I was building a life with my wife, Sophia. On paper, we looked like the perfect couple. Me, a software engineer with a steady career, and her, a marketing executive with style, charm, and that kind of energy that could light up a room. People used to say we balanced each other out. She was the social butterfly, and I was the quiet anchor. For a while, I believed it too. But somewhere along the way, the balance tipped, and I found myself standing alone. Sophia had always enjoyed attention, but lately it felt like I had been pushed to the very bottom of her list. At first, I brushed it off. Long hours at work, stress, the usual excuses couples make for drifting apart. But the excuses didn't hold up when the same name kept coming up over and over again, Marcus. Marcus was her coworker, a so-called friend, who conveniently seemed to be available for every happy hour, every work trip, every late-night brainstorming session. I noticed the way her phone lit up with his messages, the way her face softened when she read them, the way she laughed a little too loudly whenever he was around. She introduced him to me once, casually, at a company mixer. He had that smug, overconfident charm that I've always disliked in men, the kind who act like they own the room. He shook my hand, looked me dead in the eye, and then proceeded to spend the rest of the night glued to my wife's side. I didn't say anything then. I've never been the type to create a scene, but I saw everything. And the truth was, I didn't need to confront her right away. Because by that time, I had already started preparing myself for what I suspected was coming. The breaking point came 8 months ago, when Sophia canceled our anniversary plans at the last minute. We had reservations at the same restaurant where we first met, a tradition I looked forward to every year. I was already dressed when she came into the room, barely making eye contact, and told me she couldn't make it tonight. She claimed she had a work dinner. Later, I saw photos online of her and Marcus at a rooftop bar, celebrating some meaningless milestone in their department. That was the night I stopped making excuses for her. From then on, I lived 2 lives. Outwardly, I played the part of the dutiful husband, smiling when necessary, staying quiet when she ignored me. Inwardly, I was building my escape route. I met with a lawyer. I moved most of my savings into private accounts, leaving just enough in our joint account to keep things looking normal. I installed new locks on our smart system without updating her access. I began documenting everything: emails, receipts, her unexplained absences. Every detail mattered, because I knew that when the time came, I wouldn't just walk away. I wanted the truth to burn her lies to the ground. The funny thing is, she never noticed. Or maybe she didn't care enough to notice. Either way, Sophia drifted further into Marcus's orbit and further away from me. She started spending nights at team-building retreats, answering calls in hushed tones, coming home with stories that didn't line up. I listened. I waited. And I prepared. Because one day, I knew I'd get the proof I needed, the kind of undeniable evidence that would leave her with nothing to say, nowhere to hide. And when that day came, I was ready to play my final card. The night everything snapped was supposed to be a celebration. One of Sophia's college friends was getting married, and I thought, foolishly, that maybe an evening away from work and distractions could remind us of who we used to be. I wore my best suit, the one Sophia had picked out for me last Christmas. She, on the other hand, came down the stairs in a gown that looked more like something for a red carpet premiere than a wedding. It was dazzling, yes, but it wasn't for me. I could see it in her eyes. That glow wasn't mine anymore. From the moment we arrived, I might as well have been invisible. Sophia drifted away as though pulled by gravity, and right into Marcus's orbit. He was already there, holding 2 glasses of champagne, like he had been waiting for her. They didn't even bother with the usual pretense that night. She stayed at his side, laughing too loudly, leaning too close, dancing to every song while I stood at the edge of the dance floor, nursing a drink I didn't want. I tried to swallow the humiliation, to keep my composure. But the universe has a cruel sense of timing. While Sophia twirled in Marcus's arms, a woman at our table tapped me on the shoulder and asked with a smile, "So, is Sophia Marcus's wife?" Her words hit me harder than a punch. I opened my mouth to correct her, but before I could speak, Sophia burst out laughing. She leaned in, her voice loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, and said, "Oh no, I do have a husband, but that doesn't really count, because he's boring." The table erupted with laughter. Even Marcus smirked like he was in on the joke. And me? I sat frozen, my chest hollow, my ears ringing. In that instant, whatever fragile hope I'd been holding on to shattered. There was no coming back from this. But I didn't yell. I didn't storm the dance floor or throw my drink in her face like some cheap movie scene. Instead, I set my glass down carefully, stood and walked away. No goodbyes, no explanations. Just silence. I left the reception hall and walked out into the cool night air. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text notification. When I pulled it out, I realized it wasn't meant for me. It was from Marcus, sent to Sophia but somehow delivered to our joint family plan. His message read, "Don't worry, I'll take you home after the party. He'll probably be asleep by then, the dull bastard." I stopped in the parking lot, staring at the screen. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. If Sophia's words were the knife, then Marcus's text was the twist that drove it deeper. But strangely, I didn't feel rage. I felt clarity. This was the confirmation I had been waiting for. I got into my car and drove home alone. The road stretched ahead of me, empty and dark, but my mind was sharp, calculating. 4 months I had been preparing for this moment, building a plan brick by brick, waiting for the perfect trigger. Now it had arrived, wrapped in laughter and humiliation. When I reached the house, I didn't hesitate. I locked the doors, updated the security codes, and revoked her access to every smart feature she'd ever taken for granted. I went into the study, pulled out the thick folder of documents I had compiled, and placed it neatly on the desk. Then I wrote 2 words in a text to my lawyer, "File it." Upstairs, I laid out a plain envelope on the bed with a short note. "You said our marriage didn't count. Consider this proof you were right. Your belongings are packed. Your access is gone. You're free now, just as you wanted." By the time Sophia came stumbling home in the early hours, she would find herself locked out of the life she once controlled. And I would be waiting not with anger, but with the cold satisfaction of a man who finally saw the truth for what it was. I won't pretend it was sudden. By the time Sophia laughed at me in that reception hall, the seed had already sprouted into something practical and cold. Revenge, for me, didn't look like a movie stunt. It looked like paperwork, deadlines, and quiet logistics that would leave no room for excuse. I spent the next days methodically, surgical, almost clinical, turning suspicion into proof and pain into a plan. First, the money. It's not glamorous, but it's the simplest lever. I moved the majority of our savings into a private account under my name, careful to document every transfer with timestamps and bank notifications. I left a token amount in our joint account, enough to keep the auto payments running so nothing would raise immediate suspicion. I opened a secondary, unlinked credit card for myself and quietly canceled the authorized user status on hers. I made sure every transfer had a paper trail, receipts, confirmation emails, the kind of evidence a cautious lawyer salivates over. Speaking of lawyers, I found one. Not the flashy type, but a temp-sober, efficient attorney who didn't believe in drama. We met for an hour every other week. I asked the exact questions that matter: community property, asset protection, temporary restraining orders if they tried to retaliate with false accusations. I didn't tell her everything, only what she needed to build a fortress. Copies of emails that suggested more than professional interest, unexplained hotel charges on our joint card, animated text threads at 2 in the morning. She told me what to keep and what to double-check. I took notes like a man preparing for battle. Then the house. Everything Sophia took for granted was tied to a code or an app. Our smart lock, the garage, the thermostat, even the camera doorbell she used to flirt with followers. I sat with the user manuals like they were love letters, learning every reset, every default. On a Tuesday evening, while she was out with the team, I changed the master codes, revoked her access from the family profile, and updated the recovery emails to mine. I installed a second lock on the back door that required a physical key I alone possessed. I did it without a spectacle, quiet taps, a few clicks, a shuffle of boxes that she'd later call mysterious. Evidence was my currency. I'd been saving online receipts and screenshots in a hidden folder for months, but I needed more than screenshots. I needed an undeniable video. That's where Mark came in. Mark, my old college buddy who now runs AV for events. I didn't ask for favors, I asked for a file. He was the kind of guy who could, without fanfare, retrieve footage from the venue's archive and export it with metadata intact. He asked only twice, and the second time he slid me a single 10-second clip across a dim bar table. Sophia, near the head table, laughing, full tilt, saying the thing she said that night. Her voice clear, her smile unconcerned. It was short, but lethal. I cataloged everything. Messages, emails, timestamps, the footage, the credit card charges, each item labeled, dated, and cross-referenced. I printed copies that went into a thick manila folder and mirrored everything to an encrypted thumb drive. The thumb drive lived in my desk drawer. The folder stayed in my study. Order gives confidence. Confidence gives control. There were practicalities too: storage, movers, and optics. I contacted a secure self-storage unit under a business alias and scheduled a pickup for a late Saturday night. I hired a small moving crew, 2 quiet guys with a white van, who were given precise instructions to load only what I pointed to. No drama, no witnesses, no misplaced items. When they arrived, I handed them a checklist and watched as they packed Sophia's life into identical cardboard boxes. It felt strange, like watching an old film reel being wound down. I labeled the boxes neutrally, household items, and handed the van off to a courier who would deliver them to the storage unit an hour later. Before any of that happened, I wrote a note. Not a manifesto, but a short, unadorned letter I left on the bed, folded in half. It read, "You said our marriage didn't count. Consider this your freedom. Your belongings are packed. Access has been revoked." I filed what needed filing. It wasn't cruel, it was factual. I wanted clarity when she woke to confusion. At night, when the house was quiet and the hum of the refrigerator felt loud, I rehearsed what I would say if she called. I imagined her panic and planned my tone. Calm, not cruel. Revenge isn't about joy, it's about setting the record straight and letting the truth do the work. All the pieces were in place: legal counsel on standby, money shielded, evidence preserved, her physical access removed, and her belongings boxed away. The last thing I prepared was an audience. Not a public spectacle, just a selective distribution list. I compiled the small circle of people whose judgment mattered: her parents, a cousin who'd always been reasonable, and one person I suspected would act without mercy, Rebecca, Marcus's longtime girlfriend, who deserved to know if the man she was with had crossed a line. When the moment came, they would see the footage and the timeline in black and white. That, more than any dramatic outburst, would unravel the carefully constructed narrative Sophia and Marcus had been stitching together. I slept poorly that week, but I slept. Preparation steadied me. I hadn't wanted to be the loud, collapsing husband or the bitter spectacle. I wanted to be the architect of a clean end. The plan was not about revenge for revenge's sake, it was about consequence. If she wanted to treat our marriage like a joke, she'd have to live with the fallout in full daylight. And I'd make sure it was impossible to deny. That night, while the echo of Sophia's laughter still burned in my ears, I set the plan into motion. The house was silent, the kind of silence that almost hums in your chest, but inside me everything was sharp and clear. One by one, I went down the checklist. First, I reset every code: front door, back door, garage, even the alarm system. With a few taps on the control panel, Sophia's access was gone. Her fingerprint, once registered, was deleted from the smart lock. If she tried to come home tonight, the house would not recognize her anymore. Next, the money. I logged into the bank app, shifted the last of the funds from our joint account into my private one, and placed a freeze on the credit card where she was an authorized user. Within minutes, her financial leash was severed. No more luxury dinners or impulsive shopping trips on my dime. Then came the boxes. 45 cardboard containers stacked neatly in the garage, filled with every piece of her wardrobe, trinkets, and designer shoes she once flaunted like trophies. By midnight, the movers I had scheduled were at the house, loading her entire life into a van destined for a storage facility across town. Watching them carry out box after box felt surreal, like erasing her presence from my home in real time. Finally, I picked up my phone and sent 2 words to my attorney: file it. By dawn, Sophia was locked out of more than just a house. She was locked out of the life she had taken for granted. The first call came at 6:14 a.m. Her voice was frantic, panicked, sharp with confusion. "Daniel, the door won't open. My card isn't working. What the hell did you do?" I let her rant, then replied evenly, almost politely, "You said our marriage didn't count because I was boring. So consider this your freedom. You're out, Sophia. Completely." She screamed, cursed, demanded. I hung up. By midweek, the smear campaign began. Sophia and Marcus spun a story about me being controlling, emotionally abusive, unstable. But their lies collapsed faster than they were built. Because I had the footage, the 10-second clip of her mocking our marriage at the wedding, and I had the receipts, emails, texts, hotel invoices. Proof doesn't scream, it whispers, and its weight is undeniable. I sent the video first to her parents. Then to Rebecca, Marcus's longtime girlfriend. Her response came within hours, a single message: "Thank you for showing me the truth." The next day, she posted the clip publicly. The internet did the rest. Sophia and Marcus were dragged across every social feed, ridiculed, condemned. His company quietly terminated him within a week. Her parents, embarrassed and furious, cut off the financial support she'd leaned on for years. Without Marcus's salary or her family's money, Sophia was left with nothing but consequences. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she was working as a waitress at a small diner, scraping tips to pay rent on a cramped apartment she shared with strangers. Marcus vanished from the social circle entirely, a ghost with a ruined reputation. And me? I didn't raise my voice once. I didn't break anything, didn't throw a single punch. All I did was show the truth to the right people and let the fallout unfold naturally. That, I realized, was the most satisfying revenge of all. 6 months later, the divorce papers were signed, stamped, and sealed. The legal battle had been surprisingly quick, almost anticlimactic, given the storm that had preceded it. With all the evidence on my side, Sophia's lawyers had little room to argue. What she once mocked as a boring marriage had become her most humiliating defeat. I sold the house we once shared, the place that had become a museum of silence and broken trust. The walls no longer held warmth, only echoes of betrayal. With the proceeds, I bought a modern apartment overlooking the city skyline. It wasn't extravagant, but it was mine, untouched by lies. Each morning I woke up to sunlight streaming through wide windows, and for the first time in years, I felt peace. Friends asked if I ever missed her. My answer was always the same: you can't miss someone who never truly valued you. What I missed was the version of myself I had buried during those years of neglect. The man who laughed freely, who didn't question whether he was enough. Slowly, I found him again. The irony is that I never raised a hand, never shouted, never sought vengeance through destruction. All I did was shine a light on the truth. And the truth did what it always does. It burned through the lies until nothing was left but ash. Sophia and Marcus had become cautionary tales whispered about at social gatherings. "Did you hear what happened to them?" People would murmur. I didn't need to say a word. The story told itself. And in that silence, I found a strange, bittersweet satisfaction. One evening, as I unpacked the last box in my new home, I came across the handwritten letter I had left on our bed that night. Simple words, calm, almost cold: "This house no longer belongs to you. Neither do I." Reading it again, I realized it wasn't just a note to her. It was a declaration to myself that I had taken back control of my life. If there's one lesson I carried from this, it's this. The sweetest revenge isn't about fists, insults, or rage. It isn't about sinking to the level of those who betrayed you. The sweetest revenge is letting the truth stand tall, unshaken, while lies collapse under their own weight. Deceit is a fragile thing. It destroys the hands that weave it. To anyone who has ever been betrayed, I'll say this: don't let anger devour you. Don't let bitterness chain you to the past. Let truth be your weapon. Let patience be your shield. When you act with clarity and restraint, those who wronged you eventually destroy themselves, far more thoroughly than you ever could. And so, my story ends not with fire and fury, but with quiet resolve. I smile now, not because I won, but because I walked away with my dignity intact. Life is lighter without the weight of deceit. And sometimes, the best revenge is simply moving on.